The Council promised peace. But tonight, Earth's sky burned red. Above the quiet cities of Earth, faint trails of light moved across the darkness. To most people, they looked like harmless meteors, but Admiral Reyes knew better. From his office in the orbital command station, he watched the lights and felt a cold weight in his chest. They were Council warships, and they were moving in silence without sending identification signals. That could only mean one thing: hostile intent. The betrayal had begun. Just 3 days ago, Earth's ambassador had been locked out of a council, meeting for the first time in history. No warning, no explanation. The message was polite but final. Attendance is not required. Inside that private meeting, the galaxy's most powerful rulers gathered in a vast chamber of crystal walls and golden light. They spoke of keeping balance and maintaining order, but their words hid a darker truth. They had already decided Earth was dangerous, too independent, too capable, and growing too fast. By the time the meeting ended, the decision was sealed. Earth's colonies would be taken, its fleets dismantled, and its leaders replaced. But no one told Earth. They wanted the strike to be a surprise. On the command station, Reyes's comms. Officer turned from her console, her voice tight. "Sir, Mars defense just went silent." Reyes felt the cold weight turn to ice. Mars was Earth's closest colony, heavily guarded, impossible to take without a fight. If Mars was already silent, it meant the attack was well underway. He demanded a link to the Mars governor, but all he got was static and the faint crackle of an emergency beacon. It lasted only 2 seconds before it too was gone. The Council wasn't sending warnings. They were erasing voices. In the war room, the holographic map flickered to life, showing enemy movement. Red icons bloomed around Jupiter's orbit, Council ships in perfect attack formation. Reyes studied the pattern. This wasn't punishment for some broken law. This was extermination. He remembered the whispers he had ignored over the last year. Rumors of secret council votes, resource shortages in alien worlds, and mysterious disappearances of human freighters in deep space. It all made sense now. The council feared what Earth might become. They wanted to destroy it before it became too powerful to challenge. "Open secure channel. Code Black," Reyes ordered. Only a handful of people even knew that code existed. It connected him directly to the Earth Defense Council in the underground command center beneath Geneva. Faces appeared on the holo display: politicians, generals, and advisors. Some looked shocked, others furious, and a few strangely calm. "They've started," Reyes said without preamble. "Mars has fallen silent. Jupiter's orbit is crawling with Council warships." An older general spoke first. "Then we negotiate. We can't win against the full Council fleet." A young minister slammed her fist on the table. "Negotiate? They're already killing our people." Reyes stayed, silent for a moment, then spoke with iron in his voice. "We can win. But only if we stop pretending this is politics. This is war." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. They all knew what he was hinting at. Project Black Sky. It was Earth's most dangerous secret, a fleet of Titan class. Warships built in hidden shipyards under the ice of Antarctica and deep within the asteroid belt. The galaxy believed Earth had 12 capital ships. In truth, it had 30 more, each one armed with weapons never before used in combat. But activating Project Black Sky would reveal those ships to the galaxy, removing any chance of surprise in the future. If they failed now, there would be no second chance. Before anyone could reply, a sudden alarm cut through the room. On the display, the holographic map zoomed in on Mars. A live feed appeared. Council destroyers hanging in orbit, their weapons glowing with the buildup of energy. The surface of Mars lit up in blinding flashes as orbital bombardment began. Buildings, defense towers, entire districts vanished in seconds. The camera feed shook violently before collapsing into static. The war room fell silent. Then, through the crackling speakers, came a voice. It was small, frightened, and full of static. "This is Mars Colony. Please. They found us." The message cut off mid-sentence. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Reyes turned to the council members, his voice low and steady. "If we wait, Earth will be next. If we fight, we have a chance." One by one, faces on the display looked away or nodded in grim agreement. Finally, the Earth Defense Chairwoman spoke. "Admiral Reyes, activate Project Black Sky." Reyes felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Understood. He cut the link and turned to his officers. "Signal all Black Sky assets. Prepare for launch." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, if we do this, the entire galaxy will know our true strength." Reyes looked back at the red icons blooming across the map, the symbols of enemy warships closing in. "Good," he said. "Let them know exactly what they woke up." Outside the command station, the warships in low orbit began to turn, aligning, their weapons toward the darkness beyond the moon. Somewhere out there, the Council fleet was waiting. And deep beneath Antarctica, titanic engines rumbled for the first time in years, melting ice and shaking the Earth. The war had already begun. But now humanity was going to answer. Darkness stretched over Earth's night side, but high above, in the black sea of space, something moved. Not the glitter of stars, not the slow arc of satellites. This movement was different. It was deliberate, silent, and coordinated. From the command deck of the orbital station, Admiral Reyes studied the tactical display as new red icons appeared at the edge of the screen. They were not coming in from the usual trade lanes. No, these ships had emerged from deep space coordinates, far beyond normal travel routes, slipping in from blind spots the Council believed Earth could not monitor. But Earth's silent watch satellites, hidden for decades in forgotten orbits, had seen them. And what they saw was not a patrol. It was an armada. Reyes leaned closer, watching the formation. Smaller frigates at the edges, heavier destroyers. In the center, and at least 3 cruisers at the rear, their engines burning faint blue, their profiles unmistakable. The Council was not just sending a warning fleet, they were preparing for a planetary strike. The comms officer's voice was tight. "Admiral, they've crossed into the outer defense zone. Orders?" Reyes didn't answer right away. His eyes locked on one blinking marker, an anomaly near Jupiter's orbit. It wasn't moving like the rest of the fleet. It pulsed irregularly, as if trying to mask its signature. He ordered the sensors to focus on it. The reading came back, and a cold knot formed in his stomach. It was a stealth carrier, capable of launching hundreds of strike craft without warning. They hadn't brought one of those since the Outer Rim Wars, a sign they weren't leaving anything to chance. Suddenly, a coded transmission cut through the static. It wasn't coming from Earth. It was from somewhere in the Council's own territory. A familiar voice spoke in hurried tones, almost whispering. "Reyes, they know about Black Sky. They're coming to destroy it before you can launch." Reyes recognized the voice instantly. Commander Halvek, an alien officer who had once served alongside him during the border skirmishes. But before Reyes could respond, the channel went dead, replaced by a burst of white noise. The comms officer checked the signal. "Source terminated. Admiral, it's gone." Reyes knew what that meant. Halvek had been silenced. In the war room, the holomap shifted, showing more enemy movements. A second wave of Council warships had just appeared, this time near Saturn's orbit. They were cutting off every path between Earth and the outer colonies. Humanity's supply lines were already being choked. The crew worked in tense silence, the only sound the soft hum of the station's systems. Then, without warning, the long-range sensors began screaming. An energy surge was building in Jupiter's shadow. Reyes ordered the feed switched to visual, and the image appeared on the main display. Massive council battleships, their hulls blackened to absorb starlight, charging their main weapons. Their gun batteries weren't aimed at the station. They were aimed at Mars. Reyes slammed his fist on the console. "They're finishing the job!" He ordered the fleet's recon ships to scatter, using the asteroid belt as cover. If the Council detected them, they'd be destroyed instantly. His second-in-command approached quietly. "Sir, if they're already this deep into our system, Earth's orbital defenses won't hold." Reyes didn't disagree. He had seen what happened to worlds that resisted the Council. Cities leveled, populations scattered or enslaved, history rewritten. The Council didn't simply conquer, they erased. His mind raced. If Black Sky was compromised, then waiting would only invite destruction. But activating it too soon meant facing the entire Council with no element of surprise. The choice was impossible. Just then, an alert flashed across the display. "Unknown signal detected," the AI reported. Reyes ordered it on screen, and the bridge filled with the distorted image of a woman in a dimly lit room. Her face was half hidden by shadow, her voice low. "Admiral, they're not alone." She transmitted coordinates, far beyond Pluto, near the Oort cloud. Reyes had the computer cross-check the data, and what came back made his pulse quicken. Another fleet, unmarked, massive, and not broadcasting Council codes, was waiting there. It meant the Council had allies in this war, allies who were staying hidden until the killings started. And they were waiting for Earth to be weakened before joining the slaughter. The message cut off abruptly, and the woman's image dissolved into static. No trace of the source remained. "Find her," Reyes ordered, but the AI replied coldly, "Unable to trace. Source was erased at origin." The bridge fell silent. Outside, the first Council ships passed through Jupiter's orbit, their drives glowing faintly against the darkness. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. They knew Earth was trapped. Reyes's jaw tightened. "They think we're prey," he said quietly. Then he turned to his crew. "Send this to all Black Sky units. Activate under silent protocols. No beacons. No transmissions. They launch when I give the word." Across the solar system, deep under ice, rock, and hidden hangars, crews stirred. Engines powered up in darkness. Massive warships, silent and unseen, prepared for their first battle. But in orbit above Earth, Reyes stayed still, his eyes on the approaching enemy. He could feel the tension like a storm pressing against glass. Every second they drew closer. Every second the trap closed tighter. And somewhere out there, beyond the light of the sun, a second, unseen threat was waiting. The shadows in orbit were only the beginning. The red world had always been a symbol of human courage, the first great step beyond Earth, the first colony to stand on its own. Now it was a battlefield. From the orbital command station, Admiral Reyes watched the live tactical feed as Mars' defense grid flickered and died, one sector at a time. The Council ships moved with ruthless precision, their formation tight, their weapons firing in perfect rhythm. Surface-to-orbit missiles launched from Mars towers were intercepted mid-flight, detonating harmlessly in the thin atmosphere. Reyes's comms officer worked frantically to re-establish contact with the colony's governor. Static filled the speakers, broken only by faint bursts of desperate voices. One transmission managed to cut through the interference, a security officer shouting over the sound of alarms. "They've breached the upper sky shields, taking heavy fire." The line went dead with a sharp crack. A second feed came online, showing a shaky view from a civilian drone hovering above Olympus City. The skyline glowed in the darkness as buildings burned, their glass and steel collapsing into molten ruins. Far above, the black silhouettes of Council destroyers drifted like predators, firing slow, deliberate blasts into the heart of the city. People on the streets ran in every direction, shadows against a storm of fire. Reyes felt his fists tighten. He had trained half the officers stationed on Mars. Now their signals were blinking out one by one. "Sir," the sensor chief said quietly, "enemy landing craft are entering the lower atmosphere." Reyes's mind flashed through the possibilities. These weren't just bombings. The Council intended to take survivors, and that meant only one thing. They were targeting skilled engineers, scientists, and military officers to strip Mars of its best minds before wiping the rest away. The holomap zoomed in, revealing dozens of small landing vessels breaking through the smoke and dust, heading straight for Mars's major population centers. In the war room, a young lieutenant asked the question everyone was thinking. "Should we launch the Black Sky Fleet now, sir?" Reyes shook his head, his voice grim. "Not yet. If we show them our strength now, they'll scatter, regroup, and come back stronger. We need them to believe Earth is still scrambling." Even as he spoke, the feed from Olympus City flared bright white. The drone's image dissolved into static. The Council had destroyed the city's central power core. In one instant, every defense turret, shield generator, and comm relay tied to that grid went offline. From the chaos came a faint new voice, a child's voice, thin and trembling. "This is Olympus Shelter 7. We're still here. Please, help us." The transmission was weak, breaking apart in bursts of static, but Reyes could hear the terror. He could also hear the sound of heavy footsteps and distant metal groans. Enemy forces were closing in on the shelter. "Track it," Reyes ordered, and the AI began triangulating the signal. But before they could act, the child's voice gasped. Sharply, and another voice, deep, alien, and cold, spoke into the open channel. "Your people are ours now." The signal cut off. The bridge was silent except for the steady hum of systems. Reyes's second-in-command looked at him. "If Mars falls completely, they'll turn for Earth next. We won't have long." Reyes's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make them pay for every step." He sent orders to the stealth frigates hidden in Mars' orbit. They were small, fast, and lightly armed, but they carried something far deadlier than firepower. Each had a deep scan array, capable of mapping every ship in a battle zone down to the smallest shuttle. Within minutes, the arrays lit up with data showing the exact number, position, and status of every Council vessel above Mars. Reyes studied the patterns. The Council fleet was focused entirely on Mars's surface. They weren't watching for an attack from beyond their outer perimeter. He stored the data and locked it in a secure channel to be used when the Black Sky Fleet launched. But that would not save Mars tonight. A sharp alarm sounded as the planetary sensor grid went completely dark. Mars' main defense control hub had fallen. The last of the colony's shield systems flickered and died, leaving the cities naked, under the fire of the Council guns. On the main display, the red glow of the planet was swallowed by rolling waves of black smoke. Huge impact craters lit with molten rock dotted the surface like fresh wounds. Reyes forced himself to watch. He knew every second of this would burn into his crew's memory, and when the time came to strike back, they would remember why. "Admiral," the COAM's officer said quietly, "the last Martian transmission has ended." The meaning was clear. Mars had fallen. Reyes turned away from the display, his face hard. "Signal all Earth forces," he said. "Tell them the Council has declared war on humanity." He looked once more at the smoldering red planet, then at the growing swarm of enemy ships moving toward their next target. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "And tell them we will answer." The news of Mars's fall spread across Earth like wildfire, carried on emergency broadcasts, intercepted Council transmissions, and the raw, unfiltered images leaked by fleeing civilian ships. Cities fell silent as people crowded around public screens, watching the red planet burn. In the underground command center beneath Geneva, the Earth Defense Council gathered in a sealed chamber of steel and reinforced glass. The air was tense, heavy with fear and anger. Admiral Reyes stood at the head of the table, his uniform marked with the dust and ash of the orbital station, his eyes sharp. "Mars is gone," he said flatly. "They didn't just take it, they erased it, and they're on their way here." The council members erupted into arguments. Some demanded immediate surrender, claiming that negotiating might save at least some of humanity. Others called for open war, but their voices shook with uncertainty. The defense chairwoman raised her hand for silence. "Admiral Reyes, you've seen their movements. Do we have a chance?" Reyes didn't hesitate. "We do, but only if we stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a predator." He activated the central holo display, revealing the hidden Titan-class fleet, massive warships hidden under Antarctica's ice, in asteroid caverns and deep ocean docks. The council chamber fell silent as the images rotated slowly, showing sleek black hulls and weapon systems the galaxy had never seen. "Project Black Sky," Reyes said. 30 Titan-class warships, each equipped with Ghost Lance cannons, shield-piercing missile batteries, and stealth drives. "The council doesn't know how many we have. They think Earth has 12 capital ships. They are wrong." A councilman shook his head. "If we reveal them now, every species in the galaxy will see us as a threat. We'll be at war forever." Reyes's gaze didn't waver. "If we don't use them now, there won't be an Earth left to defend." An older general leaned forward. "And if we fail? If they destroy the Titans?" Reyes's voice dropped to a low, cold tone. "Then humanity dies fighting, not kneeling." Before anyone could respond, the chamber's alarm lights flashed red. A voice came over the intercom. "Incoming transmission from the Council fleet." The display switched to the image of a Council admiral, his face a mask of arrogance. "People of Earth," he began, "you have violated the balance of the galaxy. Your colonies are dissolved. Your fleets will be dismantled. Surrender now, and some of you will be spared." The message ended abruptly, replaced by the real-time feed of the Council fleet closing in past Saturn, its destroyers and cruisers, forming a wide net. The chairwoman looked at Reyes. "If we fight, we risk everything." Reyes met her eyes. "If we surrender, we lose everything without a fight." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, with a single nod, the chairwoman said, "Activate Project Black Sky." Reyes turned to his wrist console and keyed in the launch codes. Across the planet, massive doors hidden beneath glaciers, mountains, and ocean floors began to open. Under Antarctica, the ice shook and cracked as the first Titan-class warship, the UNS Valiant, rose slowly from its cradle, engines glowing like the heart of a star. In the asteroid belt, buried under kilometers of rock, the UNS Ironclad powered up, its massive hull scraping against stone as it forced its way into open space. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, the UNS Leviathan rose from the depths, water cascading off its black armor as it ascended toward the surface. In the Geneva chamber, Reyes watched the activation sequence unfold on the holo display. One by one, status lights turned green as the Titans came online, their reactors humming with deadly energy. He knew it would take hours for them all to reach their launch points, but when they did, the galaxy would see the true face of humanity. Outside, above Earth's night side, defense platforms rotated toward the stars, locking onto incoming targets. Civilian transports began evacuation procedures, heading toward safe zones deep underground or hidden in the far reaches of the solar system. Reyes turned back to the Council. "This is no longer about survival. This is about making sure the Council never dares to touch Earth again." The chairwoman nodded. "Then make them afraid, Admiral." Reyes saluted sharply, then strode toward the command elevator. As the doors closed, he glanced once more at the live feed of the enemy fleet. They were still coming, slow and confident, certain of their victory. They didn't yet know that their prey had just become the hunter. Thayer, Icy winds of Antarctica howled over the barren white expanse, but beneath the surface, the world was roaring to life. For decades, the black sky hangars had slept in silence, their colossal doors sealed under layers of ice thicker than city skyscrapers. Now those doors were splitting apart with thunderous cracks, sending shards of ice tumbling into the frozen valleys below. From the darkness, the first Titan-class warship emerged, the UNS Valiant, its black armored hull reflecting only the faintest shimmer of the weak polar sun. The ground shook as the ship's massive engines came online, lifting it slowly into the sky on a pillar of blue fire. Inside the warship's bridge, Captain Aria Holt stood at the viewport, watching the frozen landscape fall away beneath her. "All systems green," her first officer reported. "Stealth drive at 98% capacity." Holt nodded, her voice steady. "Engage silent running. We leave the atmosphere in shadow." Across the planet, other Titans stirred from their hiding places. In the asteroid belt, a chunk of rock the size of a small moon split apart, revealing the UNS Ironclad's hull buried within. Explosive bolts fired, blasting debris into space as the ship's reactor surged to full power. In the Pacific Ocean, the sea boiled as the UNS Leviathan rose from the depths, water cascading off its flanks like a waterfall from the edge of the world. Its engines roared as it broke the surface, sending shockwaves across the waves for kilometers. From orbit, Admiral Reyes monitored the launches with cold precision. Each Titan's signal was masked, buried under false readings designed to make them look like drifting debris or dead satellites. The Council's long-range sensors would see nothing until it was too late. The enemy fleet had reached the outer edge of Jupiter's orbit, their formation tightening for the approach. Reyes knew they expected Earth's 12 known capital ships to rise in defense. They would be ready for 12. They would not be ready for 30. On the Valiant's lower decks, engineers worked feverishly, bringing the Ghost Lance weapons online. Each lance was a massive energy spear capable of punching through any known shield system, its beam so concentrated it could cut a battleship in half in a single shot. The weapons were kept cold until the moment of firing, making them invisible to most scans. Captain Holt's crew moved with calm efficiency, their voices low, their eyes focused. They all knew what was at stake. A sudden alert flashed on the Valiant's tactical display. A Council scout frigate had entered Antarctic airspace, its sensors sweeping across the ice. Holt's jaw tightened. "Weapons cold," she ordered. "No fire unless detected." The scout passed overhead, scanning, its search beams cutting through the snowstorm like white knives. For a moment, it hovered directly above the Valiant's launch site, and Holt could feel the tension ripple through the crew. Then, without warning, the frigate turned away, its engines flaring as it returned to orbit. "They didn't see us," her first officer said quietly. Holt didn't answer. She knew the scout had seen nothing because of the stealth drive, but she also knew the Council rarely relied on just one scan. They would be back, and next time, it would be with a squadron. In orbit, Reyes opened a secure channel to all Titan captains. "This is Admiral Reyes. Your orders are simple. The enemy believes we are on defense. We will show them otherwise. We launch in Formation Omega at my command. Until then, stay dark, stay hidden, and prepare to strike with everything you have." Across the fleet, captains acknowledged. In the asteroid belt, the Ironclad's crew armed their shield-piercing missiles, each one tipped with a warhead designed to overload energy grids and leave ships defenseless. In the deep oceans, the Leviathan sealed its pressure bays and activated its railgun batteries, the barrels humming with magnetic charge. Slowly, the Titans began moving toward their rendezvous points, ghosting through space with their engines at minimal output, slipping between asteroid shadows, planet eclipses, and gravitational blind zones. Hours passed like seconds. Every crew, on edge, every sensor sweep watched with silent intensity. In the outer system, the Council fleet pressed forward, its destroyers fanning out to cut off any possible escape. They still had no idea what was waiting for them. Reyes stood at the heart of the orbital command station, his eyes fixed on the tactical map. 30 green icons, his titans, were converging on a single vector that would bring them behind the Council's lead ships. Once in position, they would rise from the darkness and strike in one overwhelming wave. "Admiral," his operations chief said, "Black Sky is in position." Reyes allowed himself a single grim nod. "Good," he said. "Now we hunt." The darkness of space hung heavy over the outer planets, the stars distant and cold, as the Council fleet advanced with mechanical precision, its silver warships gliding in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons, shields glowing faintly. In the void, their massive engines leaving faint ripples in the black. They believed Earth's forces would meet them head-on, a desperate defense against overwhelming numbers, and they had calculated every move for that scenario, but hidden in the asteroid shadows and planet eclipses, 30 Titan-class warships were waiting in complete silence, their black armored hulls absorbing light, their stealth drives masking even the faint hum of their reactors. Admiral Reyes stood in the command pit of the orbital station, eyes locked on the tactical map, watching. The enemy icons creep closer to the kill zone. "Maintain dark status," he ordered into the comms, his voice calm but edged with steel. On the UNS Valiant, Captain Aria Holt's hands rested lightly on the armrests of her command chair, her eyes never leaving the forward viewport where the enemy's lead dreadnought loomed like a metal mountain in the distance. "Target solutions?" she asked, and her weapons officer replied, "Locked on primary reactor cores of the first 3 ships. Ghost lances primed." Across the fleet, similar confirmations came in. The ironclad's railgun coils glowed faintly. The Leviathan's missile bays were sealed but armed. The Midnight Spear's plasma batteries sat cold, waiting for ignition. The enemy's vanguard passed the point of no return, their sensors still showing nothing but empty void. And then Reyes gave the order that would shatter the quiet. "Black Sky, unleash hell." In a single heartbeat, the Titans broke stealth, their systems roaring to life, and the void erupted with light and fury. The Valiant's ghost lances fired first, 3 blinding beams of white energy that speared through the darkness and punched straight through the shields of the lead dreadnought, cutting its armor like paper, the beams tearing through its reactor core and igniting a chain of explosions that ripped the vessel in half. The ironclad followed with a volley of shield-piercing missiles, each one striking with pinpoint precision, overloading the energy grids of 2 enemy cruisers until their lights died and their hulls went cold and lifeless, drifting helpless in space. The Leviathan rose from the shadow of a gas giant and unleashed its railguns, the projectiles moving so fast they became invisible streaks of death, smashing through engines, splitting decks, tearing apart weapons batteries before the enemy even realized where the shots had come from. The Council fleet reeled in shock, their tight formation breaking as captains screamed orders and shields flared to maximum power. But the Titans pressed the attack without pause, moving like hunters through a panicked herd. The Midnight Spear's plasma batteries ignited, unleashing molten streams that burned through the side of an enemy battleship until its hull glowed red and then burst apart in a silent firestorm. Enemy return fire began to scatter across the darkness, bright spears of energy streaking toward the Titans, but most missed completely, their targeting still scrambled by the sudden shock of the ambush. A few lucky shots struck home. One Titan's shields flared violently before holding, another took a glancing hit that tore a hole in its secondary hull. But none fell. Holt's voice was steady as she gave rapid orders, weaving the Valiant between debris fields, using shattered enemy ships as cover while her crew reloaded the ghost lances. "On my mark," she said, her eyes fixed on the largest enemy vessel still operational, a carrier bristling with fighter bays. 3, 2, 1, fire! The beams lanced out again, slicing through the carrier's central spine, and its entire midsection folded inward before detonating in a wave of molten metal. Smaller Council ships tried to flank, darting through asteroid gaps, but the Ironclad and Leviathan moved to intercept, their firepower swatting the attackers from the void before they could even reach the main formation. Admiral Reyes watched. The chaos unfold on his tactical display, his expression unreadable. "Keep the pressure on," he ordered. "Don't give them time to regroup. Every ship we destroy now is one less in the inner system." The Titans moved like predators, striking fast, then vanishing back into shadow, reappearing from new angles, each attack timed to hit just as the enemy adjusted to the last blow. The Council fleet was bleeding ships faster than they could adapt, their confidence evaporating with every explosion. In less than 20 minutes, the Titans had crippled or destroyed nearly a third of the enemy force, their ambush so devastating that panic rippled through the Council ranks. Still, Reyes knew this was only the opening strike. The enemy's numbers were still massive, and once they recovered from the shock, the fight would turn brutal. On the Valiant, Holt gripped her chair tighter as enemy fighters finally began to swarm, dozens of small craft darting toward her ship like angry hornets. "Point defense online," she snapped, and the Valiant's automated turrets sprang to life, filling the void with bursts of flak and streams of laser fire, shredding the incoming wave before it could close the distance. In the distance, the Leviathan's missiles lit up the darkness once again, punching through the heart of a destroyer squadron, the resulting explosion scattering debris across kilometers of space. The Ironclad charged its railguns for another volley, targeting the last remaining dreadnought in the enemy vanguard. "Fire!" its captain commanded, and 2 slugs slammed into the vessel's bridge and reactor within seconds of each other, ending it in a blinding flash. Reyes's voice cut across all channels. "All ships, prepare for Phase 2. We're taking the fight deeper." And with that, the Titans began to shift formation, their black hulls disappearing once more into shadow, leaving behind a graveyard of shattered metal and frozen bodies as the survivors of the Council fleet scrambled. To understand what had just happened, under the dim light of the war room, Earth's high command sat in tense silence as Admiral Kepler's voice filled the chamber, his words heavy with the weight of fresh intelligence reports. The Council's fleets had withdrawn from contested space, but their movements were far from random. They were regrouping, massing ships at choke points and reinforcing critical systems, signs that they were preparing for a decisive counterstrike. Humanity's early victories had shocked the galaxy, but the Council was far from finished. Kepler's sharp gaze scanned the gathered officers. He knew morale was high after the last battle, but he also understood that overconfidence could kill. More soldiers than any enemy weapon. Reports from the front lines told stories of ambushes and sudden disappearances of human patrols in deep space. Something was lurking in the shadows, hunting them. Commander Reyna, leader of the Fifth Fleet, leaned forward and spoke, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They're probing our defenses, Admiral. This isn't retreat. They're studying us, waiting for us to make a mistake." The thought lingered in the room like a shadow. The Council had centuries of warfare experience against dozens of species. They would not throw away fleets without a plan. Outside the war room, the shipyards worked day and night, the sound of construction echoing through orbital stations. Humanity was pushing its limits, producing more warships, more weapons, more ammunition than ever before. Entire economies were converted into engines of war. Civilian freighters were stripped down and rebuilt into combat carriers. The people of Earth and its colonies understood the cost of betrayal. They were ready to pay it in blood if necessary. On the front lines, Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the battleship Vanguard's Wrath. His ship had been assigned to patrol the Vega Corridor, a narrow but strategically vital route between Council-controlled space and human territory. For days, there had been no sign of enemy activity, until the long-range sensors picked up faint distortions. The readings were inconsistent, almost ghost-like, but Rourke had been in enough battles to know when something was wrong. "Bring the ship to battle readiness," he ordered calmly. The crew moved without hesitation, weapons systems powering up, shields humming with energy. Minutes later, space ahead of them rippled, and 4 massive Council warships emerged from cloak. They wasted no time, opening fire with a barrage of plasma rounds. The Vanguard's Wrath returned fire instantly, unleashing a wall of railgun projectiles and missile salvos. The corridor became a storm of fire and light. In the chaos, Rourke noticed something unusual. The Council ships weren't trying to destroy them outright. They were testing weapon ranges, shield tolerances, maneuverability. It was exactly what Commander Reyna had warned about. Elsewhere in the Orion Belt, human intelligence operatives intercepted encrypted Council transmissions. The data revealed the existence of Operation Ashfall, a massive coordinated assault, planned to crush Earth's fleets in a single, overwhelming strike. The plan involved multiple fronts, diversions, and the deployment of experimental weapons. When this intel reached high command, the War Council erupted in debate. Some argued for an immediate preemptive strike to disrupt the operation. Others warned it could be a trap designed to lure human fleets into overextension. Admiral Kepler listened to every argument in silence before finally speaking. "We will not play their game, but when they come for us, they will regret it." Preparations began for the largest defensive mobilization in human history. Massive minefields were laid in deep space, automated gun platforms deployed in key systems, and entire fleets placed in stealth formation. Humanity's war machine was not just responding, it was adapting. On the Vega corridor, Captain Rourke's crew fought relentlessly for hours before finally forcing the enemy to retreat. But victory brought no celebration. The Council had learned what it came for. Rourke knew the next time they met, the enemy would be ready for everything they had seen today. Back on Earth, the civilian population was restless, but united. Propaganda broadcasts reminded them of the Council's betrayal, showing images of destroyed colonies and fallen soldiers. The message was clear. This was a fight for survival. Children grew up knowing the names of battles and heroes instead of games and songs. Everyone was a soldier in spirit, even if they never held a gun. As the days passed, more intelligence came in. Council fleets were massing near the Scorpius Edge, far larger than anything humanity had ever faced. And then came the real shock. Reports of allied alien species joining the Council's side, convinced that humanity's rise threatened the balance of the galaxy. The betrayal was spreading. Admiral Kepler convened his top commanders one final time before the storm. "The Council believes they can break us," he said, voice steady, eyes cold. "They think betrayal will shatter our spirit. They are wrong. We will not just survive this war, we will end it." In the shadows of space, fleets moved into position, weapons primed, crews ready. The final act of the Council's betrayal was coming, and humanity was prepared to meet it with the full fury of a species that had been underestimated for the last time. The Council's war machine was now in full motion, its fleet spilling across the edges of human-controlled space like a flood of steel and fire, each movement calculated to pressure humanity into spreading its forces thin. Yet Admiral Kepler refused to be baited, instead consolidating Earth's defenses into heavily fortified kill zones where any attacking fleet would pay in blood for every kilometer gained. But the real test came when deep space scouts detected the main body of the enemy armada gathering beyond the Scorpius Edge, an armada so vast it blotted out starlight in the sensor sweeps, a wall of death moving as one. It was Operation Ashfall, the very assault human intelligence had warned about, now finally materializing, and Kepler's strategy shifted from defensive patience to controlled aggression, his orders precise. Let them come. Let them believe humanity would hold ground until the last moment. then unleash counterstrikes that would rip the heart out of their formations. In the weeks before the attack, entire sectors were evacuated and turned into trap-laden kill zones, automated rail platforms hidden in asteroid belts, cloaked missile carriers drifting in silent ambush, and mines seeded across gravitational choke points, so dense that even the most advanced Council navigational AI would struggle to plot a safe path. And while these defenses were being prepared, humanity's fleets drilled relentlessly, perfecting synchronized warp jumps, coordinated alpha strikes, and simultaneous flanking maneuvers designed to break even the most disciplined enemy formations. On the Vanguard's Wrath, Captain Elias Rourke stood at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical holo display updates in real time. His crew, a blend of grim veterans and young officers who had never known a life without war. Rourke had been assigned to the Third Fleet, stationed along the Vega corridor, but now redeployed to a forward ambush point near the Scorpius Edge, their mission not to hold, but to bleed the enemy before they reached the primary defense lines. And as hours turned into days, the tension aboard the ship became a tangible thing, pressing on every soul aboard, like the crushing silence before a storm. The first contact came without warning, sensor alarms blaring as enemy Vanguard squadrons dropped out of warp directly ahead, their hulls painted with the emblems of Council Corps fleets, heavy cruisers supported by swarms of attack frigates, and in that instant, Rourke's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "Target lead formation, all weapons, fire at will!" And the Vanguard's Wrath became a spear of light and fury, rail guns tearing through enemy shields while missile salvos curved in graceful arcs before erupting in blossoms of plasma and shrapnel. Yet the Council's return fire was merciless, slamming into human shields with bone-rattling force, their coordinated barrages designed to overwhelm defenses in seconds. As the battle raged, human reinforcements warped in on Rourke's flanks, the trap snapping shut with mechanical precision. Frigates emerging from asteroid shadows to fire broadsides at point-blank range, stealth destroyers decloaking behind. Enemy cruisers to deliver kill shots to exposed engines, and in less than an hour, the Vanguard squadron was shattered, their survivors fleeing toward the main fleet. But this was exactly what Kepler had planned. The Council had taken the bait, now fully committed to pushing deeper, unaware of just how many layers of defense they were about to encounter. Back at Earth Command, Kepler monitored the battle feeds with the detached focus of a man who knew that every decision in the next 72 hours could decide the fate of his species. The enemy's main fleet was still hours away from engagement, but smaller engagements like Rourke's were already shaping the battlefield, forcing the Council into predictable lanes of attack, and as each enemy push was met with brutal resistance, their formations grew more ragged, their coordination faltering under the relentless pressure of precision strikes. When the Council finally crossed into the primary kill zone, they were met with a wall of firepower unlike anything seen in the galaxy. Planetary defense platforms opening up with continuous rail fire, heavy cruisers lining up in staggered formations to create overlapping kill arcs, and carrier groups launching wave after wave of strike craft, their pilots screaming through the void in desperate, furious dogfights that lit up the black-like storms of white-hot meteors. Yet for all their losses, the Council pressed forward, driven by the sheer momentum of their numbers and the belief that they could crush humanity through attrition. But what they hadn't counted on was how far humanity was willing to go. Deep. In the defense grid, hidden in a secure bunker, Earth's tactical AI, codenamed Aegis, was running real-time predictions of every enemy movement, feeding counter-strike orders to fleet commanders within seconds of hostile maneuvers, turning the battle into a brutal chess game in which the Council's every move was anticipated and punished. Rourke's Third Fleet, battered but unbroken, fell back into the secondary line, their ships scarred and smoking, but the crew still fighting with the kind of ferocity only born of betrayal and survival. And as they rejoined the main defense, the true scale of the battle unfolded before them. 1,000 ships locked in a sprawling, three-dimensional war zone stretching across millions of kilometers, Explosions blooming like deadly flowers, wreckage drifting through the dark, and comm channels alive with the overlapping voices of commanders shouting orders, pilots calling, kills, and the dying sending final words home. Through it all, Admiral Kepler's voice cut through the chaos on the secure channel. Hold the line. Every second you fight, another trap closes. Every ship you destroy brings us closer to breaking them. And as the battle entered its second day, with neither side willing to give ground, it became clear to both the Council and humanity that this was no longer just a war over territory or power. It was a fight for the right to decide the future of the galaxy itself, and only one side would be left to write its history. Under the cold and distant glow of alien stars, the war had reached its breaking point, and every faction in the galaxy knew it. Humanity's fleets had carved a path of fire and ruin through enemy lines, but the Council's betrayal still burned like acid in the hearts of Earth's commanders. Admiral Kalen stood on the bridge of the Titan-class dreadnought Resolute, staring at the holographic map of the war front. Red enemy markers bled across the sector, but there was a new cluster, larger, more concentrated, moving directly toward the human fleet. It was the enemy's last stand, a desperate gambit to crush Earth's forces before they could push deeper into core Council space. "They're gathering everything they have," Kalen said, his voice low, controlled. Around him, the bridge crew moved with mechanical precision, scanning data streams, updating trajectories, and relaying orders to smaller task groups. The Resolute was not alone. Hundreds of warships, destroyers, carriers, frigates, and other dreadnoughts hung in formation across the void, their hulls gleaming with the reflected light of a distant sun. Each vessel carried crews who had lost friends, families, and homes to the Council's treachery. None of them needed a speech to remind them why they were here. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace in a blinding burst, their formations stretching across the dark like a wall of steel and fire. They did not hesitate. They opened fire instantly, unleashing a storm of plasma bolts, railgun slugs, and missile swarms that tore through space like a tidal wave. The first impacts rocked the human vanguard, shields flaring and collapsing under the initial onslaught. But Earth's fleet did not scatter. They advanced. Kalen gave the order, and the Resolute's massive spinal railgun fired, the shockwave rumbling through the entire ship. A slug the size of a shuttle screamed through space, piercing an enemy capital ship from bow to stern, splitting it in half in a burst of molten debris. Across the battlefield, human warships responded in kind. Massive beam weapons lanced out, cutting swaths through enemy formations. Carrier-based strike craft swarmed forward, weaving between defensive fire to drop antimatter charges onto exposed hulls. Yet the enemy was relentless. They pushed harder, sacrificing entire wings of ships to keep the humans pinned in place. Kalen recognized the tactic. They were buying time for something bigger. "Admiral," came the urgent voice of Commander Arlen, "we're detecting massive energy signatures at the rear of their formation. Multiple spikes, bigger than anything we've seen before." Kalen's gut tightened. "They're bringing in their super capitals." And then they appeared, towering behemoths of alien engineering, bristling with weapon arrays and shield generators the size of cities. Their mere presence shifted the tide, as their guns unleashed devastating barrages that ripped through human lines. For the first time in the battle, it seemed Earth's fleet might falter, but Kalen was not one to retreat. "Bring the Resolute to full power, target their lead ship, fire everything." The Resolute surged forward, engines screaming, as the rest of the human dreadnoughts followed suit. The space between the two lines became a maelstrom of destruction, ships exploding, shields collapsing, debris fields growing thicker by the second. Human destroyers dove in close, weaving between the massive alien hulls, hitting their weak points with surgical precision. One by one, the enemy's supercapitals began to falter, shields flickering, hulls cracking under sustained fire. Still, the price was high. Dozens of human ships were reduced to twisted wrecks. Every loss was felt, but every victory pushed them closer to breaking the enemy line. Hours into the fight, the moment came. The lead alien supercapital took a direct, hit from the Resolute's railgun and fractured apart in a spectacular explosion. That break rippled through the enemy ranks. Their formations began to crumble. Orders turned into chaos. Ships tried to flee, but the humans pursued, unwilling to give them a chance to regroup. By the time the battle ended, the enemy fleet was shattered. Wreckage drifted silently across the void, glowing with fading embers. Humanity had won the largest engagement of the war, but Kalen knew this was not the end. It was only a step. The path ahead led straight into the Council's heart worlds, where the final reckoning waited. "Set course," Kalen ordered quietly, his eyes never leaving the stars ahead. "We finish this." The human fleet moved like a silent blade through, the dark engines burning low to avoid detection, every ship primed for the final strike. Admiral Kalen stood on the Resolute's bridge, staring at the looming shape ahead on the holo map. The Council's capital world, a glittering sphere wrapped in layers of orbital defenses and shipyards that spanned continents. This was the heart of the betrayal, the seat of the rulers who had ordered Earth's destruction and unleashed war on humanity. Around the planet, defense fleets waited in layered rings, each one thick with battleships, carriers, and weapons platforms capable of erasing entire cities in seconds. It was a fortress no invading force had ever breached, but Kalen had no intention of turning back. The humans had already torn through the enemy's outer sectors and shattered their largest fleets. Now there was nothing left but this. "All ships, prepare for silent approach. Once we're in range, we hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop until the planet's burning," Kalen ordered, his voice carrying the weight of years of war. The fleet slid into attack position, their hulls blackened with stealth coatings, their weapons running cold until the moment they would ignite. Minutes later, the first salvo tore through the void. Massive railgun slugs, beam lances, and missile swarms screaming toward the enemy's outer defense ring. The first explosions lit the darkness, shattering stations and punching holes in the defensive line before the Council ships even had time to respond. But once they did, the void erupted into chaos. Enemy fleets surged forward in perfect coordination, their heavy guns painting space with fire as they met the human advance head-on. The Resolute charged through the first wave, its shields flaring. Under heavy impacts, railguns firing in deafening rhythm. Destroyers and frigates darted in and out, targeting shield generators and cutting supply lines, while carriers unleashed swarms of drones and bombers that ripped into capital ships at point-blank range. The battle became a storm of steel and light, ships dying in every direction. Yet for every human vessel that fell, 3 enemy ships followed. The Council's vaunted coordination faltered as Kalen's forces broke their formations piece by piece, isolating pockets of resistance and annihilating them before moving on. Hours into the assault, the humans reached the inner defense ring where the largest orbital cannons were housed. These titanic weapons could level continents, and their first volleys carved brutal gaps in the human formation. Kalen made the call: no retreat, no regrouping, full forward assault. The Resolute and its sister dreadnoughts dove into the cannon line, unleashing point-blank broadsides. One after another, the colossal guns exploded in fireballs that lit the capital planet's atmosphere. But the enemy still fought. From the planet's surface, new defense batteries came online, hurling plasma beams and missile storms into orbit. Kalen's ships began targeting the surface directly, precision strikes tearing through military installations and command centers. Entire cities that housed the Council's war machine were reduced to molten craters. Finally, with the defenses in ruins, Kalen gave the order that would end it all. "Bring the planet killers online. Target their central command." The Resolute's main gun recharged, drawing power from every reactor aboard, the entire ship, trembling as the weapon reached firing strength. Across the fleet, similar weapons locked onto the target, a sprawling golden spire that jutted from the capital city where the council rulers were believed to be. In one unified strike, the weapons fired. The beams converged on the spire, melting it from crown to foundation, collapsing it into a boiling sea of fire. Silence fell across comms as the sight sank in. The council was gone. Their fleets were shattered, their homeworld crippled beyond recovery. Across the galaxy, news of the destruction would spread in hours, and every species that had once bowed to the council would know Earth had not only survived, but had become the most feared power in known space. On the bridge of the Resolute, Kalen stood motionless, staring at the burning world below. "It's done," he said quietly, though every soul aboard knew the truth. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity now held the throne of power, and whether they ruled with justice or with iron would shape the stars for generations to come.